let's get started. I see folks trickling in. Thank you very much, everyone, for making time out of your busy schedule to learn a little bit about CMMC and what Cyflare and Inovo InfoSec, the presentation that we're going to give today. I wanted to do some quick introductions before we get started and lay out the agenda. I think you're in for a fun conversation, Kevin. Kevin Hughes is VP of Sales with Inovo InfoSec. Inovo is an organization that's um, deeply embedded in the defense industrial base from a cybersecurity consulting standpoint. They have many years of experience in the space. Fun fact, Kevin used to be in a prior life involved with an MSP and grew their revenues. So he understands fully what some of our partners here at Cyflare, how they think about things. So it's going to be a good conversation. If
Yep.
we can jump to the next slide, I can talk a little bit to what Kevin and I are going to cover. Um,
Yep.
and Kevin, please feel free to jump in if I miss anything. But
Sure.
really, CMMC, from Cyflare's perspective, is a very big revenue opportunity. The market is extremely ripe right now. And so we really wanted to talk to our partners and others about the opportunity where there is great opportunity. There's also a lot of work to be done to position yourself correctly. So we're going to go through
Right.
Kevin's going to go through a lot of CMMC 101 basics, the ecosystem, what the journey looks like for your end customers, what they're going to be looking for from you as a MSP or service provider, and of course, how you can be situated correctly, what things you should be doing and thinking about so that you can go on that CMMC journey with your customers instead of being a risk for them. Um, Kevin,
Exactly.
anything to add?
Yeah. So whether you're kind of new to this concept or you have a ton of experience in it, it's going to apply to everyone on this call. So whether you're just checking this out and want to learn more and know very little, or you're helping clients right now that are under this CMMC compliance, this will be very applicable to you. So I hope everyone gets something out of it, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So feel free to submit questions via the Q&A button at the top, and then we'll be able to address those at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Yes, questions are very, very welcome. Please feel free to ask anything. Um, if you can move to the next slide, Kevin, that would be
Yeah.
great.
Hmm.
Um, so CMMC, Cyflare really sees a major revenue opportunity here that Cyflare certainly cannot ignore, and I truly believe that our MSP and other service provider partners cannot ignore. Just some quick fun facts that speak to the scope of the problem here in folks getting CMMC certified. There are currently about an estimated 100,000 contractors in the defense industrial base that are going to need to be CMMC level 2 certified. Um, and the key there is the ones that require that will mostly rely on MSPs to help them out. For MSPs, it's a high revenue opportunity. Estimated annual compliance spend uh, per client can vary wildly, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 to $150,000 a month. And remember, these contractors are small businesses, mid-sized enterprises. So there's a lot of money to be spent there. And again, for them, it's a matter of um, sustainability, right? They cannot afford to lose contract eligibility. And
Right.
these customers are also going, from an MSP standpoint, by the time you tack on consulting and readiness preparations, the technologies, the processes to kind of get folks CMMC certified, these customers are going to be anywhere from 5,000 to 20,000 plus monthly recurring revenue type of contract. So again, there's high urgency right now just by the sheer number of contractors that need to be certified and very few certifiers that are available to do it. The urgency is real. There is a first mover advantage because most MSPs are not really very strategic about how they tackle CMMC customers. They themselves are not ready to support that work.
Yep.
But if you are, there's high lifetime value, as you can see. There's not only the dollars, but there's regulatory lock-in, right? Because once an MSP is part of that process and it's certified, it's very hard to change out. So that's the revenue. That's the revenue potential. Kevin, if you
Yep.
move,
Yeah, and I
oh,
would
go
just
ahead.
add, when I was doing MSP sales, some of my largest deals were in this exact space. So I was on your side of the fence, and I know as a like a VCAO or a TAM or a salesperson, you spend a lot of time trying to convince people, convince clients to improve their own cybersecurity. And that's the right thing to do. And you continue to battle that on a day-by-day basis. What's nice about CMMC is that there's really zero convincing you have to do anymore because they have to do it. And we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about the opportunity there. So it's a real opportunity to kind of drive that value. And Akash will kind of walk us through what that pathway looks like.
Yeah, and I'll make this very quick because I really want Kevin to get into the meat and potatoes of things. But Cyflare realizing that CMMC is a huge revenue gatekeeper, and that MSPs are being asked to help customers through the whole process, we realized very quickly that clients need not just the operational security that Cyflare is so good at providing with its CMMC certified solutions, but the customers also need certification guidance. And this is where Inovo comes in with the ability to assess, plan, document, and guide the customers through that whole CMMC readiness and audit journey. So again, Cyflare provides the security operations, Inovo provides the compliance overlay. And together, what that means is for partners, MSPs, and other service providers, it's a full stack defensible path to CMMC readiness that the customers crave, right? You have a very credible solution here that you don't have to build out internally and still get those very sticky, high revenue clients. With that said, Kevin, I'll pass it on to you to kind of give us the
Yeah.
more info on Innova.
Yeah. So here's how we can help you, right? Well, one, we're not an MSP. We never have, never will. Actually, most of our owners and partners were former MSP owners, but we've been operating as an advisory compliance cybersecurity firm. We're probably closer to like a CPA firm than we are at MSP in terms of what we do, the scope of services we offer. But we do have a partnership program, just like Cyflare is a partner. We're a partner to you. It's a team sport, CMMC. So we have sales engagement that we can work with ownership, sales, and the VCO technical account manager teams. We can help you with marketing, and we share revenue along the way. So there's the opportunity to make revenue on our maturity level assessments for CMMC on projects. We'll provide the kind of quality control oversight and verification that the projects are done well, but a lot of the projects we just kick back to our MSP partners so they can execute, server replacements, network segmentation, cloud migrations, things like that. And then we also share MRR with you because there's recurring component to CMMC, which is great. We kind of be the architect or the quarterback of it, but we share revenue on the MRR side. And then we can help you with consulting and readiness services for CMMC for you and your clients. And for those that are really looking to get into the space, we actually guide MSPs on how to get certified themselves. So we can talk a little bit more about that when we get into the presentation a little bit later. But that's how we can help you. You don't have to build out all the expertise internally. You just got to know how to identify the opportunities. And then between Cyflare and Inovo InfoSec, we can guide you and your clients along the way. And it's definitely going to be a team effort. But Cyflare's tools and security is really important, and it's very unique. So I want kind of Akash to speak to that and how Cyflare plays in this space with CMMC Level 2 specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So when customers are looking for a CMMC ready MDR, manage, detect, and respond capability, one of the things to know is that most MDRs create compliance risk for your customers. So because the security protection that MDR companies provide is really in scope or and touches what a an organization looking to certify for CMMC needs, they're going to they're going to be the MDR, how the MDR operates, the people process technologies are going to come into audit scope, right? And unless
Yep.
and and that can create a lot of audit burden for you guys to validate controls for the MSP. It requires documentation. It adds a lot of friction during the assessment. And one of the negatives is if you fail your assessment, it's all or nothing. You're going to have to go back and reassess, and that's going to cost the customer a lot of money. With Cyflare and our CMMC compliant environments, they're built on FedRAMP certified cloud service providers, and our service itself is audited for CMMC level 2. And what that really means is you don't have to prove that Cyflare is compliant, which means it's a checkoff item. It reduces the scope and it reduces the amount of scrutiny that the auditor is going to give you. And it also means faster certification timelines. So it's a huge value add having that capability with somebody like Cyflare.
Yeah, we're very standardized on this solution for CMMC specifically because they have their US-based SOC, the SIM, and they've already gone through the certification process for the technology that's in scope here. So it really gives you and your clients in the space a big advantage. Anything else on this you want to comment on Akash, or if you go forward with
No,
the rest?
yeah, we can move to the next one.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm Kevin, VP of Sales at Inovo. You kind of know that already. So who's Inovo and why should we trust Inovo for CMMC? So what you see on the screen here are a lot of kind of badges and certifications. And the people in the defense industrial base will understand this a little bit more. But Inovo InfoSec is what's known as a CMMC RPO, a registered practitioner organization. There is a governing body called CyberAB that you might see on the screen here. These little badges. CyberAB is the organization governing body that certifies organizations in the CMMC ecosystem. So RPO just means we can do consulting and readiness for CMMC. We also have a sister company that is a authorized C3PAO. That's the official audit entity in the CMMC ecosystem. I myself is what's known as a CCP, which is a CMMC certified professional. I can help on the consulting and audit side. Then obviously as a cybersecurity company and a CISO company, we have CISPs on staff and a bunch of other fancy acronyms. I think there's more acronyms in CMMC and cybersecurity than maybe almost any other field. It's a lot. So don't get bogged down by that. I'll try to walk you through it. But we've been doing this a long time. So in addition to CMMC, we've been auditing and assessing and doing readiness for NIST 800, for DFARS. You might have clients that have those clauses in their contract. We also deal with SOC 2 and ISO and CIS. And we actually go through actually 4 different audits every year as a business. So we go through a SOC 2 Type 2 audit. We go through CMMC, obviously. We go through an ISO audit, and we also go through a high trust audit because we have some healthcare clients. But the good news is that we've been there, done that. We're there to be your experts and kind of guide you through the process. And now this is kind of like a history slide of CMMC. If those that have been in this business or support these clients for a long time, you'll know that some of these things got pushed down the road, but this is definitely not anything that's new. It actually started back in 2010. President Obama signed Executive Order 13556 that created this whole framework and kind of kicked it off. You're going to hear this word a lot, CUI, or controlled unclassified information. The idea is that we just don't want sensitive information to get in the hands of the bad guys, the people that are not aligned with American interests. So that's what all these laws, protections, compliance are about. So that kicked it off. There's different DFARS clauses that were put into law along the way. DFARS basically says, hey, you need to apply NIST 800 171 controls to your company if you want to receive this government contract. And then there's different rules that kind of got added along the way. There was a requirement added that you have to report breaches within 72 hours. With DFARS 7019 and 7020, the government can basically say, hey, we want to come check out your facility and give you notice. I think it's like 60 or 90 days, but don't quote me exactly on that. but that's when actually the defense industrial base or people from DFARS will actually come to your facility to verify everything. And now where we're at is that we're now in CMMC 2.0. So there was a 1.0 that started several years ago. Now we're in 2.0. It's in effect today. And what that means is that if you're at CMMC level 2, and we'll get into that on the next slide, you're now required to have a independent third-party audit or assessment that you have actually implemented all the level 2 controls. So this is where we are right now. And it's critical because by November 10th, 2026, what that means is the Defense Industrial Base is expecting anyone that is going to receive a government contract that contains CUI must have an active certification. If they do not have an active CMMC level 2 certification, and there's a government body that detects and tracks all of this, they will not be allowed to be awarded future government contracts. So think of your clients that are making widgets that are going to planes and spacecraft, whether they're circuit boards or sheet metal or turbine engines, whatever the case is. If they cannot show and prove that they are certified by an independent third party, it's going to be the C3PAO, they will not be allowed to get a future government contract. And that's, for most of these clients, that's how they make a majority of their money. So there's definitely some really big urgency for these clients to move, and that's the opportunity that we have to work on together. This is kind of basic diagram of the different levels. Level 1, 2, and 3, I'll kind of explain. It's really based on the type of data that's being received in these contracts. So level 1 really isn't our target, but it's for those companies that have FCI or federal contract information. It's not as sensitive as data as CUI or controlled defense information CDI, but there's still some details in there. Think of it as, you're getting a government contract to produce, thousands of widgets. It's not like a weapon or something that's going in an engine, but it's still kind of classified information. They want to protect it. And if you have FCI, you need to be compliant with level 1, and you got to implement 17 practices. But really, you're doing a self-assessment and then submitting that on through a website. Level 2, where we're really focused on, and where there's, I think, the most opportunity, is with organizations that have CUI, controlled unclassified information. That's where you have to implement 110 practices that are with CMMC level 2, and you have to have a third-party assessment completed. And again, that deadline is November 10th later this year. Level 3 is a little bit more stringent. It's very similar, but there's some additional controls and practices that have to be implemented. And actually, the people that do the assessment is actually a government defense body themselves. So we want to kind of focus on these level 2 folks as much as possible. And just kind of give you a high idea of what CMMC level 2 is. Basically, there's 4 different domains or families, and within each of these families, there's several controls or practices that have to be implemented. There's a total of 110 practices in all. And within each of those practices, there's actually 350 plus audit objectives. So for those that are familiar with like CIS, there might be an individual control, but then there's sub-controls underneath that also have to be implemented. That's kind of the same framework that we have here. So these are the kind of the families or the categories or domains. Within that, there's practices and objectives that have to be met. This gives you a little bit more detail of scope. So level 1, again, it's with that FCI data. There's 17 practices in all. When you go to level 2, it adds on 93 more in each of these domains, from access control down to system information integrity. But there's 110 practices in all. And so let's take a look at one in particular, just kind of give you an idea of the level of detail here, right? So this is one control, has to do with access control. 3.101, and it's asking that information system access is limited to authorized users, processes acting on behalf of authorized users and devices. And so we're guiding clients through this process, this is one practice of 110, but under this 110, there's actually 6 different objectives that have to be met and proven during an audit. And that's what this A, B, C, D, E, F is here. So what does this mean? This means that when you are preparing and we're preparing a client to pass their certification, we have to prove all 6 of these objectives in order to get this one practice to actually succeed and be categorized as met. You fail one objective of the 6, this entire practice fails. And since this is a 5-point objective, there are kind of 1-pointers, 3-pointers, and 5-pointers on the CMMC scale. This is an auto fail. If you fail any 5-pointer on your initial assessment with your C3PAO, the whole thing fails and you got to go back and start over. So think about your client. These audits are not cheap. They're tens of thousands of dollars. And if you just fail one objective on one 5-point practice, it's an automatic fail. Now, there's others that you could potentially not satisfy completely, and you'll get some time to correct those. But anything that's a 5-pointer is you got to admit it, you got to meet it, or if you don't meet it, it's game over, you lose. It's either you get 110 or you don't. So there's a lot on the line. There's a lot at stake. There's a decent amount of complexity what we're doing here. So it's really, really important to pay attention to the details and document things correctly. In terms of architecture and how this works, you probably heard snippets of this down the line, but essentially the government gets to decide, hey, we need so many more planes or so many more widgets for the Army, the Navy, what have you, whatever government agency. And then they specify the data that's in those contracts as FCI or CUI. So there's an office actually with NARA that actually determine that, and they track it. That flows down to the primes. The primes are like your Lockheeds and your Raytheons and those folks. And now then they evaluate those contracts and then divide up the contracts among subcontractors. So there might be a case where Prime has a contract with the government, and they have a subcontractor 1, and they only have FCI data. So these guys only need to be compliant with CMMC level 1 according to that contract. If it contains FCI and CUI, this subcontractor here is now required to be compliant with CMMC level 2. And then there are some situations where there's a COTS vendor. COTS means commercial off the shelf, kind of like regular bread and butter products, screws, fasteners, raw material potentially. But even though I say that, I actually have clients that actually make fasteners for planes, and they have to be compliant with level 2. But the idea, this is how this whole ecosystem is regulated, right? The government issues it to the prime, and the prime, their job is actually to verify that the subcontractors are CMMC level 2, whatever the proper certification is. It's on them to do that. And if they try to hand out business to those subcontractors, they have some liability in the process as well. So that's how it gets tracked through the ecosystem. This is a really good slide. I got a little good feedback. So this is kind of the journey that a defense industrial-based manufacturer or a DoD contractor has to go through. So step 1 for them is they have to identify their own CMMC level. So it's not the MSP's job to figure this out. The client should know this. They should know it based on the contracts that they have. If they have CUI in it, they should know it based on conversations that they're having with their prime contractors. So they have to identify what level they need to be at. The next step here, as you kind of go around the circle, is that they have to engage with a CMMC professional. Some people try to DIY it themselves. If you're a larger company, I guess you might do that, but most of the companies we work with are small businesses or mid-market. They would engage with a CMMC professional like us. From there, you kind of have to identify the scope. You have to identify where the CUI exists. What systems are they in? How many facilities are we talking about? Is it just on-prem, or is it in the cloud, or is it both? And then really the first step to really kind of kick the whole process off is conducting a gap assessment. Now, a gap assessment is basically the process of saying, all right, let's look at all these controls. Let's verify which ones are in place today, and we feel comfortable that those would pass certification, and then identify where there's gaps, missing evidence, missing documentation, or missing implementation. So you're going to have to do like a reality check and kind of do, hey, where are we at in this process? How many of the 110 are done? It might be 5, it might be 2, it might be 100. And then figure out what to do and what plan there is to kind of create a roadmap to complete the rest of those controls. So you do that gap analysis, you create that plan. The plan in CMMC is called an SSP, or a system security plan. It's kind of the big major document, and they're usually hundreds of pages long. You create your plan of action and milestones, also known as a POAM. You have to do a CUI flow diagram, a network diagram. You might create an IT responsibility matrix to show what is the MSP responsible for, what's internal IT responsible for, what's internal operations responsible for. Then you got to complete all your projects, get all your ducks in a row, and then feel confident that you're actually going to pass this assessment. So once you're at that point, This is what we do. We guide you and your clients through that process. We actually now have to perform assessments. So that at that point, you're going to reach out to a C3PAO. That's the official assessment body under level 2. Identify those folks. Their cost is not cheap. They usually run tens of thousands of dollars. I think last time I checked, there are about 110-ish certified C3PAOs in the country. So they often have long waiting lines just to get their time to conduct these assessments. But ideally, if you have everything lined up, you schedule your assessment, you pass, and you get your certificate, and you're good. And now you have your CMMC Level 2 certification. So now you can bid on future government contracts and continue to make money. Everything's fine and dandy. But it doesn't end there. This is a continuous process. Every year, you're going to have to complete a self-assessment after you have that third-party assessment. You have to post your results on a website called SPURS or SPRS, and someone within your organization, normally an executive, will have to sign off on that and do that annually until you get to 3 years, and you have to go back through the process again in 3 years. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell, and that's kind of the journey that clients go on. Just to give you an idea, this is kind of a quick commercial of Inovo and what we do with CMMC. This is kind of the 12-step program for guiding clients through the CMMC to level 2 journey. So we'll start out and we'll do that gap assessment for them. We'll form what we call an information security committee. This is very much a team sport. You're going to hear me say that time and time again. CMMC can't just be done by one person. So the MSP is going to be involved. We're going to be involved, kind of architecting and guiding the process. A client executive will need to be involved. Often client operations, client HR will need to be involved. We form that committee so we can write and improve policies. We can start implementing the controls, providing documentation, creating SSP. We'll put in the technology tools with Cyflare and their solutions. And we go through this whole process until we're ready for assessment. And that's at step 12. So we guide the clients through that entire space. And in terms of the ecosystem in the governing bodies, I'll spend some time on this. I know there's a lot of acronyms, and I apologize in advance. It's just kind of the nature of the beast here. But the roles and names you should know, CyberAB, that's the organization where we have our RPO certification from. So they certify organizations. Organizations like the C3PAO auditors and the registered practitioners or the consultants that are helping clients with CMMC. Asaka is new to the game. It just got switched over actually about a month ago. They're responsible for certifying the individuals with CMMC. So, for example, myself, I am a CCP, a certified CMMC professional, but they also certify those that provide training content, those that actually conduct the trainings. They're the instructors. There's a whole certification process there that is involved. And so when you're talking to a DoD contractor, these are kind of the acronyms and names that they're going to know if they're well educated. And as an MSP, these are things that you could, lead into. So if you have a lot of clients in this space, you might want to lead into being a registered practitioner organization, and we can help guide you in how to do that. But if you don't, you need to be very careful about the type of advice that you're giving, because we don't want to create a sticky situation where we're kind of over-promising on what we're delivering and getting ourselves into trouble. A quick story on this. We actually were working with a $2 billion defense contractor recently. And they were working with an MSP, and they had a CMMC consultant, and they invest a lot of money, about $100K, towards getting their CMMC level 2 compliance certification. They told their client they were ready for their audit, and they went to the C3PO, which is that third-party assessment organization, and they got to the C3PO and they failed, and they weren't even close to ready. They spent a lot of time and effort, and the defense contractor was not happy. So they ended up firing their MSP. They went and hired a new MSP, and the good news is that MSP was one of our current MSP partners. So they hired the new MSP. The MSP knocked on our door and said, "Hey, we have this client. They need help." We started working together with them as a team. We got their CMMC back on track, and then we went and passed their audit, 110, perfect score. Lead assessor said that this is the best tooling, monitoring, reporting, documentation they have ever seen. And I tell you that story not just to kind of toot our own horn, but what we're hearing from the market is that the fail rate at audit is somewhere between 50 to 80%, because there's a lot of consultants out there, a lot of MSPs that are kind of saying, oh, we got this GRC software tool, or we bought this platform from, insert company name in the MSP ecosystem, and we can put together some documentation and let's go and get ready for our audit. CMMC is just a different beast altogether. The documentation is extensive. The controls have to be done correctly. There's no such thing as 90% and you win. You have to have a perfect score. So if you're not familiar with actually walking clients through this process and getting them passed and certified as level 2, be very cautious on what you say and promise to your client, because there's a big fail rate out there, and we can help you do that correctly. So you can retain that client, make money, and continue to recruit new people in the space. So I don't want to scare you, but I just want to kind of give you the good and the bad. There's kind of two edges to the sword. There's huge revenue opportunity in this space. It's going to grow. There's 100,000 these defense contractors that are going to need help, and they're going to go to you first. So what I want to advise against you is, yeah, let's go after it, but let's do it the right way. And I think the way to do it the right way is clearly describing the segregation of duties between MSPs and IT and folks like us at Inovo InfoSec that focus on information security. Cyflare and us, we want you guys to win. We want you to win by retaining your clients and growing revenue in this space. But we do that in a team effort. And the way we do teamwork is that we come in and we become the information security partners. So we focus on the CMMC strategy, the roadmap, the governance and the alignment, the policies and the procedures, and actually implementing the controls and documenting the evidence correctly. We've done it before. We know how to do it. But we're going to need your help. We need your help to support the systems that are in place to monitor servers and firewalls and do patching and provide security and access control and all the things that IT does. And together we need to create this teamwork in an information security committee to make sure that we're doing things correctly. So my job and what I did as a MSP sales rep is that I had this conversation often with clients, and you've probably done it before. You try to tell your clients, here's our role, here's what we're providing for you, here's what we're not doing. Continue to do the right thing, continue to have those talk tracks with your clients, continue to say, here's where our role ends and here's where there's gaps. The right thing to do is to bring someone in like us, a professional with Inovo, to kind of have that oversight of what you're doing and fill in the gaps that a cybersecurity or an information security professional can do. So our job is to handle information security. Your job is to manage IT. And together we kind of make a great team and make it work for our clients. And auditors do like separation of duties. This is a control from the CMMC framework on audit and accountability. You're going to have to document, or the client's going to have to document separation of duties, and the duties of individuals will have to be defined in a policy, and then it'll have to be proven. All major cybersecurity frameworks have this requirement, whether you're talking about SOC 2, ISO, SOX, they all require segregation of duties. The same thing you do with your finances. You have your internal financial systems and you have QuickBooks or whatever your software is, but then you always bring in a CPA or independent auditor to look at it and make sure it's done correctly. The same kind of concept applies here, right? MSPs are managing IT, they're managing a lot of aspects of cybersecurity, but you want to have that third-party independent advisor that can come in and have oversight of what's going on, and CMMC requires that in this space. So the way to think about this, it's not really fair for an MSP to be 100% responsible for cybersecurity and then also be responsible for evaluating how well they're doing on protecting their clients and improving their security posture. That really should be done by an independent body, and we fulfill that role. And because we can partner with you to do that, we're in partnership together, right? If you're not finding a partner like us to partner with you and kind of fulfill that role, most likely your clients will find other parties that may not be as friendly with you to fulfill that role and requirement, right? So again, this is a team sport. It involves your client, you, us, the auditor, everyone in stake. I spent a little bit of time on this. So DoD CIO, so there's a website, it might be called Department of War CIO, but they put out this guidance for MSPs on CMMC. So where it says external service provider here, that really means managed service provider, but it's a little bit more in scope. And the reason why this is important, I wanted to tell you about it, is that when we're talking about CUI, CMMC Level 2 is all about protecting CUI, where it's stored, processed, and transmitted. If you're a cloud service provider and you have CUI in your environment, then you have to meet at least a FedRAMP moderate or equivalent requirement. So you have to comply in order to handle or process CUI. In this column, if you are an ESP or an MSP, and some of your data, your people are storing, processing, and transmitting in CUI, you are now in scope for your client's audit. So what does that mean? That means as an MSP, based on the security, the policies, the people, the technology, and how you run your business, you might be able to help your client pass their audit, or they could fail based on your business practices. So we want to be very careful and sensitive about that, because we want to make sure that we're doing what's best for our client, and we have the things in place to make sure that they're passing their audit. Now, if you're not talking about CUI specifically, we're just talking about security, security protection data without CUI, those items are in scope as well. So think of like SIEM, EDR, MDR, those types of tools are in scope. So you'll have to work with your client and with us as the RPO to define those and make sure that they're lined up the correct way, so that your client can pass and achieve their goal as an audit. Now, I won't cover the last one because we're kind of running short on time, but so what does this mean? This means be careful about what you say and what you promise to your client. I know you want what's best for your client, but we want to be very careful about what you can do there. Work with someone like us to kind of evaluate how your practices, your technology, your policies impact clients that are in this space. And if you want, you yourselves can voluntarily pursue your own level 2 certification through a C3PAO. And then what that allows you to do, it allows you to already have your documentation that you pass all of your controls, and you can pass those controls on to your client. And you basically already kind of pre-checked a box for them, and you kind of given them a head start. So if you're interested in pursuing this, we can talk more about that offline. There's questions about it, that's fine. But just be very cautious about what you promise. But that's why there's significant steps you have to be willing to take to support clients in this space. I spent a little bit of time on this. We got a couple more slides and we'll kind of wrap up and do some questions. But with CMMC, I know this is kind of hard to see, but we'll get you this presentation after the meeting. There's really 5 asset categories that CMMC will cover. First are CUI assets. Those are assets that process, store, or transmit CUI that control unclassified information that filters down from the government. Those have to be protected and assessed against CMMC practices, right? So sometimes those CUI assets might be things that you provide to a client, or it might be just the client's infrastructure. That the scope will determine that. During a gap assessment will determine that. The next category of assets are what we call security protection assets. Those are things like SIEM, EDR tools. They might not necessarily store or process or transmit CUI, but they are close proximity to CUI, and those assets as well have to be assessed against CMMC practices. So you can't just use any old EDR tool or security tool. There's a specific list of requirements that are needed here, and that's where Cyflare really comes into play and provides a lot of value. Their solution has already been certified. It's aligned with the CMMC Level 2 controls. So it really helps client kind of get a head start on their audit, which is great. There's also something called contractor risk managed assets. That just basically means, hey, these assets might be in close proximity to QE, but they're not really intended to process or store or transmit information. That could be something like say you're an ISO auditor and you come into an office and there's QE in that environment in the office, but you're not really going to store or print it or transmit it. That might be a contractor risk managed asset. You still have to document those assets in the SSP. There's still controls that are valid to those assets, but it's a different category. And all this must be documented in the security system plan, a system security plan, as part of the process. Then there's something called specialized assets. Things are like IoT devices. A lot of clients that are building things for planes and ships and that kind of thing might have like CMMC machines. That would apply here. They're not really storing or processing QE, but they might, but they will categorize them as a specialized asset, and then it has to be in the documentation, and that's part of what we'll help them define and do. And then the last category is out-of-scope assets, things that do not and cannot process, store, or transmit QE. You can document what those are, but essentially they're out of scope. And scope is a big deal. Anything you can get out of scope, that means you don't have to harden it. You don't have to assess against the controls. So it's really strategic to kind of create what's in scope and what's out of scope and define that correctly and be ready to defend that in front of an auditor. This is really hard to see, I understand, but what we do with clients to help them with this is that we got to identify where the QE is and what the security protection assets are and document all that. How do you do that? One of the ways we do that is through our gap assessment. We do something called a business information systems matrix, or we call BISM or BISM. And what that allows us to do is we sit down with the client and the MSP partner, and we just go through all of their business information systems. And when I say all of them, I mean all of them. There are a lot, right? What Windows servers, what cloud providers, what computers, mobile devices, what their ERP system is, CRM system. We document all of those. And we don't just document those, we also understand the security around those and what kind of data might be in those systems. So we'll document what the identity and access management is for that system. Is it Entra ID or is it separate password? What kind of password policy is MFA enforced? We'll understand what kind of data is in that system. The whole point of CMMC level 2 is protecting the QE, the control and unclassified information. So we got to understand where QE lives in their environment. It's probably in the file server. It's probably in email. It's probably in ERP. They might have printed copies of it around their facility. That means now the office is in scope and there's certain controls that have to be applied to the office. So part of our gap assessment process, step one, is really going through this matrix and having a very clear understanding of the systems in place and the scope, and then document the security around those systems as well. And that's really, really important. Just a couple more slides and we'll get into questions. So I keep on talking about scope, right? CMMC level 2 is about QE and protecting QE. And when you can control scope or be strategic about your scope, you really can control costs and you can control time. Most of you by now probably know about GCC High Cloud. You probably heard the name Enclave. This is an enclave in a diagram we put together in past audit recently. It's not a fit for everyone, but if you can do it, it's very useful. Because basically, if you can define and say, hey, really for our organization, the way we work, QE only needs to really exist in this small subset environment. Think of it as like a separate network, whether it's physical or virtual. And in this case, this is in GCC High, so we can spin up some virtual desktops. We can operate in GCC High. That's already fit for obviously CMMC level 2. And by the way, when we did this and we had our audit, we used Cyflare's tools for monitoring, and we kind of built this boundary around the QE data. And what's nice about that is that if we can separate and make QE just in this scope, it lowers costs by 50%. It lowers time by 50%. It creates way less disruption, and it provides a compliant solution that gets clients their certification in a much faster and a much lower cost. So we'll always look at trying to figure out how we can scope services in a way to limit costs and limit disruption for our clients. It's not a fit for everyone, but if we can get it into this format, it really reduces costs and it really, really helps. So what do all this mean? There's a lot of information. I threw a lot at you. So as part of this process and being a partner of Cyflare, we're offering a free consultation. I'll kind of go through a few different strategies here. So if you're an MSP and you're still kind of checking out CMMC, you're thinking about whether we engage or not with this industry, you can scan the QR code on your screen. It'll get in touch with us, and we'll do a quick check-in with you. See if you're the right fit, see what kind of clients you have, see how you want to pursue this, and we answer your questions, give you a better understanding of how this is very specific for you. Happy to do that. That's for kind of people that are more beginners. For those that have a little bit more experience and want to chat with us, that's fine. We can do that. We can do a checkup. We can go through a go-to-market strategy. We can help you with maybe sales and marketing resources if you want to get into that space. Happy to have that conversation as well. Again, scan the QR code on the screen. They'll get you in touch with us, and then we'll schedule that. And those on the bottom here in the black that will have a little bit more experience, we also have solutions for you. So whether you have a client that that you're working with for CMMC, we'll actually offer that client a free, what we call a CMMC Level 2 spot check. It's an 8-point inspection. We'll review their documentation. Obviously, we'll sign an NDA before that and go through a very detailed inspection with their SSP and their POAM and their CUI flow diagram with one of our CMMC CISOs, and just give them a second opinion on whether they're on track or not for their assessment, right? Or if you are an MSP and you're looking to get CMMC Level 2 certified as well, we can talk you through how we can help you with that and what that process looks like. So with that said, I know it's a lot of information. I appreciate your patience. We'll go into some Q&A here. I'm not sure if there's anything in the queue at the moment, but I'll just kind of leave this screen and this QR code up for those that are interested so you can scan it before we end this meeting here.
Thank you, Kevin. I think for all of our listeners, this slide right now on your screen is the gold slide, in my opinion. Just with Cyflare being an ESP, having gone through the process of becoming CMMC certified voluntarily, we learned so much and so clearly that helping an end customer isn't just about your technical chops. These are dangerous, treacherous, in my opinion, regulatory and compliance waters, right? So knowing where you stand today in your own business processes is super critical to knowing whether you're going to be successful with your customers. So this free consultation, I think, is gold.
Yep. Do we have any questions in the queue?
We have one question, and it is, does it cost anything to work with Inovo?
Absolutely nothing. We are a free service for MSPs. So, CMMC is our core focus, but it's not the only thing we do. We also work on SOC 2 compliance and ISO compliance, but to be our partner requires nothing. And if you introduce us to a client and we do an assessment or we do a CMMC engagement, you can make commissions and ongoing revenue both on the MRR and NR side. So there's no cost to work with us, but we do have a very well-defined partnership program with different tiers that have different commission rates and different benefits. And we really can help you take advantage of any client that is in the CMMC space or needs more expert kind of advisory services along compliance lines. So really good question. No cost to work with us. We love working and partnering with MSPs. So if there is opportunity, I'd love to chat with you guys.
Another question for you, Kevin, is are there differences between certifying as an MSP versus an end user customer?
Sure. Yeah. Really, really good question. Right. So think of this in context of Cyflare, right? Cyflare got their solution certified as level 2, right? Not because they're working on government contracts directly, right? Because they're not out there building widgets that are going in planes and spacecraft and tanks, but their clients are utilizing their services to be CMMC compliant. So as an MSP, when you get certified, you're getting certified on the exact same controls, right? And you're implementing the controls the exact same way that your customers are doing it. But the reason why you're doing it is different. You're doing it so you can best support your CMMC customers, and you can recruit new customers to work with you because you're going to make their whole CMMC compliance journey that much easier. And you're going to help them pass their audit as opposed to being a hindrance from them passing their audit. So that's a major difference. The client is getting their certification so they can get government contracts and keep on securing those contracts and making money. You're doing it so that you can work with those customers and support them in their effort. Really good question. The controls are the same, but the why is very different.
Perfect. One question, do you provide CMMC consultation for vendors as well? And I think by that, maybe maybe the question comes from someone who is a upstream vendor, right? A technology provider.
Sure. Yeah, we actually have quite a few software as a service clients. We help them on the SOC 2 side quite a bit. But if you are a vendor and you're looking to get into the CMMC space and getting your tech certified to be in this space, then yes, we can definitely have a conversation with you and guide you in that process and review your scope and what you're looking to do and help out.
And then we have one final question, and this is definitely a revenue leader or an owner that's asking this question. I love it. Will you help us with go-to-market strategies in the DIB space?
Yeah, really good question. So that's what our partnership program is all about. So the answer is yes. So I am a resource for you. So we have MSP partners that we work with today. Obviously, we want to grow that and have them in every market. If I need to join calls with clients or with prospects you're recruiting, I can do that. If you need help trying to do some marketing and having some assets to market your company to that space, we have some materials that we can provide you, and you can not white label them, but you can put your branding on, or we can co-brand it together, and you can send that out to your market. I can train your sales and VCIOs and TAMS team on CMMC, what it means, what are the questions you need to ask, how you can identify a good opportunity. All those things are in scope. There's a lot more that I'm missing, but yeah, our job is we want to partner with MSPs for this specific space and guide you in that process. And we have a lot of resources available to help you in that endeavor.
And what I'll add to that, frankly, is in this world, it's we all learn together and we all grow together, right? So Cyflare
Yep.
has personally gone through some of the challenges of getting CMMC certified. We have had to go through the thinking of how do we go to market with in the DIB space. So again,
Yep.
we're happy to share our war stories and perspectives as well.
Yeah. And as you say, that's a really good point. And I think that's the path that most MSP customers take, is that you really learn by doing, right? If you have a client and they need help with this and you just want to put us in front of them, great. You'll get a commission, you'll get a revenue share. We can help them out. But at some point, the client's going to ask, "Hey, have you gone through this process yourself?" And it's much more compelling for you to tell your client that you've gone through your process yourself as an MSP to get them on board than to just refer them to us and we can work with them, but you haven't done that your own homework. We used to call this when I was at MSP, we ate our own dog food. So before we could tell our clients to go do something, right, we did it ourselves. So, and by engaging in the process with us, you really learn a lot, and it allows you to communicate much aspects of this to your client base as you go along the way. And I think, Akash, you had that same experience. Sometimes you can go through a presentation, you can read a bunch of articles, but until you're actually doing the work and realizing the level of detail and documentation that are there, you'll learn a lot by actually going through the process yourself. And then you can kind of pass along that experience to your client.
Well, there's a good reason why there is a 50 to 80% failure rate on the first audit, right? Is
Yeah.
in Cyflare was we luckily we figured it out sooner, but our first instinct was, well, we'll just go read the documentation and do it ourselves. How hard can it be? And
Right.
when we got into the process, needing that guidance, and it took us double the time we thought it would. So
Yep.
definitely a lot there.
For those of you that know compliance, right, not just CMMC, it's tricky. And CMMC is really default, 110 controls, 350 objectives. But the whole thing is you have to document what you're doing, very clear, and then prove that you're doing it. So whatever line you draw in the sand, you have to then prove that you're doing that consistently. If you fail to execute on what your documentation says, then you potentially open up a gap that might lead to missing out on your audit. So there's a lot to document with 110 controls and 350 objectives. That has to be done correctly. And if it's not done correctly, you open up yourself to risk and your clients to risk. So there's a lot of detailed work in there that we help with.
Kevin, one thing that would be good for the listeners is, do you have any stats, and it's okay if you don't, but do you have any stats on how many MSPs are actually CMMC certified? Um,
Yeah, good question. Yeah, no, I was planning on covering that earlier. I'm glad you brought that up. So picture, right? 100,000-ish, 100,000-ish defense industrial base manufacturers that need to be level 2 certified, right? Pretty big opportunity. The C3PAOs, the people that are doing the assessments, official assessments that are certified through CyberAB, we think there's about 110-ish of those. And so they have long wait lines. They're actually pretty expensive. The MSPs that we are aware of that are actually already L2 certified is only around 55. 55 for potentially 100,000 defense industrial base contractors. So there's a tremendous opportunity for any MSP to pursue this industry. And as not an MSP, as a RPO and as a security advisor, information security advisor, we need MSPs. We need lots of MSPs because after we walk a client through and getting their certification, someone's going to need to manage their help desk and their infrastructure. And we can't refer that client to someone that's not had their security house in order. So we're looking for MSPs to get certified with CMMC so that we can partner with them and refer them clients that have their certification, because that's going to be a big need going forward. So a tremendous opportunity out there. Only 55-ish is what we've heard of MSPs that already been CMMC level 2 certified. So there's a lot of opportunity out there.
That's wonderful. Well, I know we're up on time, so I really wanted to say thank you to everyone that's been listening. Cyflare is a big believer that we hunt in packs and win together, and I know Inovo feels the same way. So again, thank you for learning with us, and if you have any other questions, just scan that QR code or pop us a note. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.